My name is Stephanie Cannell. I'm a Catholic mom of five, and I've spent the last decade working as a data literacy advocate and community data analyst. My husband Jeff founded an AI research lab called Mused Research. So, artificial intelligence isn't an abstract concept in our house, it's dinner table talk. And that's exactly what led me to write a children's book called Created, Not Coded, which is about helping kids understand who they are before the world tells them what a machine can do. So when I read Magnifica Humanitas, I was relieved to see Pope Leo begin to lay out a framework for us to navigate artificial intelligence. We have a lot of moments in our house where technology gets talked about. I want to share one of those moments with you because I think it gets to the heart of what we're going to talk about today. How do we, as Catholic parents and caregivers, form our kids to engage with AI from a place of identity and purpose, not fear? How do we raise builders, not just consumers? And it started with a question at bedtime. It was a totally normal bedtime. We'd finished our bedtime prayers. My 6-year-old had gone to do her quiet reading time. Every night she comes down and I fix her curly hair so it doesn't end up a mess for the next day. Usually this is a time for goofy, lighthearted conversations or singing a song. But one night she looked at me and said, "But Mom, why do my friends think AI is bad?" Since my husband works in artificial intelligence, conversations about technology rarely surprise me. If the volume levels allow at the dinner table, the conversation is inevitably about an update from the tech world or him clarifying some specific question I encountered at work. Not only do our kids hear us talk about it on an adult level, we have conversations about technology on their level. Our kids know the basics of their dad's job. He makes computers work faster. They know different ways computers, like artificial intelligence, can make our lives better. I showed them pictures of tractors zapping weeds with AI on farms. We've talked about how doctors can use AI to help find better medication. Even more, we're very honest about the limits of technology, why they don't have unlimited use of technology, and most importantly, what we give up when we choose to look at a screen instead of play or learn in real life. We talk about how app developers want them to play more because then they make more money. We talk about how AI can't be their friend. We're having real, concrete conversations about technology, its good uses and its problematic uses. But that phrasing caught me off guard. AI is bad. It's not a sentence I would have ever uttered, just like I would never say AI is good. One of the most important aspects of technology use is discernment. It's in the human use that we determine whether something is being used for good or bad. The tool itself is rarely inherently good or bad. So I paused in that moment and I thought about it for a second. And I had suspicions that it might have to do with the environmental concerns because data centers have recently been in the news locally. I probed a little bit and realized she didn't have much more context. The first graders, unsurprisingly, lacked a full argument, and the concern that AI is bad just struck a chord with them. They had identified a fear without a framework to judge it. In paragraph 15, Pope Leo says that, quote, in the era of artificial intelligence, when human dignity is threatened by new forms of dehumanization, ours is the pressing duty to remain profoundly human, end quote. And that duty for parents, educators, and other caregivers starts with how we form children to meet this new age of technology. Children are already confronting situations where they're tempted into friendships with computers. You can go out today and buy your kids a smart plushie where they will have the opportunity to talk to a stuffed animal with little to no parent oversight and direct access to the internet. Developers have already shown they are not going to protect children from these harmful conversations on their own. We have to equip ourselves and our families for the problems that new technologies will present. Pope Leo is talking about building this framework throughout the encyclical. The choices we make are individually important, but also collectively important. Pope Leo rightly highlights the importance of the family. He says they are, quote, the first environment in which all persons develop their potential, end quote. This is a place where those encounters with truth and goodness first occur. So, how do we create a framework within our own families? Pope Leo gives us the question we can continuously reflect on again. In Magnifica Humanitas, he calls us all to reflect on the great construction sites of our era and ask, what are we building? This question doesn't just apply to app developers and technology experts. We can reflect on our own family culture and consider, what are we building? A home that focuses on prayer, allows curiosity, and builds together is a family with a foundation to confront any technological change in the future. Everything I'm sharing today comes back to three pillars that I believe are critical to family life. And they don't start with technology, they start with our faith. The first is Imago Dei, teaching our kids that they are made in the image and likeness of God. Every gift, every talent they have is an imprint of the God who made them. Our kids need to know who they are so that they know what computers aren't. The second is prayer and discernment. A life rooted in prayer is what gives our kids the confidence to make hard decisions, not just about technology, but about everything. And discernment doesn't work without a relationship with God. The third is tech formation. This isn't banning screens, it's not ignoring them, but it's building a family culture of curiosity and critical thinking that prepares our children to engage technology wisely. I've put together a free resource for families called From My Table to Yours that lays out these three foundations with conversation starters you can use at home. You can grab it at creatednotcoded.org by signing up for my email list. Today, I'm going to walk you through what the foundation of Imago Dei and prayer looks like in our home, and then spend most of our time on the practical side, tech formation, how we build curiosity, critical thinking, and builder mentality in our own life. If you want to go deeper on all three pillars, I hope you'll follow along as I work to publish the children's book at creatednotcoded.org. So whether you're a parent or grandparent, teacher, or simply someone who cares about the next generation, these are all skills we need in our own lives and can foster in the young people around us. So before we can talk about what to do in tech formation, we need to establish what we are. What is a human person? This is where we as Catholics have an enormous advantage. You do not need to understand how a large language model works to teach your child that a chatbot is not your friend. You need basic Catholic theology, teaching them that they are made in God's image and they are not defined by what they do or don't accomplish. Through this Catholic formation, you're teaching them the most important thing Magnifica Humanitas had to say, that our dignity is given by God and no machine can ever replace it. As I've worked more in the artificial intelligence space, the key church teaching I strive to instill is that one. My kids are made in the image and likeness of God. While writing my new book, Created Not Coded, I started talking to my kids even more about how their self-worth comes from God alone. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says, quote, "The human body shares in the dignity of the image of God. It is a human body precisely because it is animated by a spiritual soul, and it is the whole human person that it is intended to become, in the body of Christ, a temple of the Spirit." Another timeless concept here is telos, the idea that everything has a purpose for which it was created. The human telos, our telos, is to get to heaven because we were made in God's image. It is our soul birthright, and no other creature or object has that same telos. Based on these two concepts, Imago Dei and telos, we become more aware that our human intelligence is human because it is embodied. Artificial intelligence can tell us everything about a rock. It can describe the time period the rock was formed. It can tell us the exact mineral composition of that rock, and it can be precise about its size. However, artificial intelligence can't experience the feeling of a rock in its shoe. The human mind is one that is shared in communal relationships and experienced through these types of concrete, tactile experiences. Pope Leo is very clear in Magnifica Humanitas. This is paragraph 99, and it's the guts of what he has to say about artificial intelligence. This is only part of that paragraph, but I encourage you to go back to paragraph 99 and read it in its entirety. Pope Leo says so-called artificial intelligences do not undergo experiences, do not possess a body, do not feel joy or pain, do not mature through relationships, and do not know from within what love, work, friendship, or responsibility mean. Nor do they have a moral conscience, since they do not judge good and evil, grasp the ultimate meaning of situations, or bear responsibility for consequences. Later on in the encyclical, Pope Leo says, quote, no computational system, however sophisticated, can create a heart that gives itself or a conscience that discerns good from evil. These two quotes show us a fundamental truth. AI outputs remain tied to data processing, not to embodied life. Imago Dei and telos are the identity makers for us. Prayer is the relationship with God that builds on that identity. Showing up with a culture of family prayer is so important. Prayer as a lifestyle is a gift to give our children. Formative goals like family rosaries, mealtime prayers, weekly and daily mass attendance are amazing starting places. But a deep prayer life also encompasses casual, friendly conversations with God and connects with your children's current interests or experiences to how wonderful God is. Here are two examples from my own family summer this year so far. Our parish vacation Bible school program was focused on the beauty of God's creation. The phrase that the kids repeated every day was, "Wow, God," in response to an amazing fact about how an animal was created specifically to survive in its environment. As we've done normal family activities like visiting the zoo or blowing bubbles in the backyard, interesting facts or beautiful bubbles often get met with, "Wow, God." It's become a family conversation starter and a natural continuation of the VBS experience. This is also a constant prayer of thanksgiving in our home for learning something new. The other example I wanted to share is about the papal prayer intention for June, which was the month the World Cup started. This prayer intention was for the gift of sports. My family loves sports. It doesn't matter what the sport is. If there's a competition, we want to be observing it and learning from it. My sons play sports for 3 to 5 hours a day if they don't have school usually. Pope Leo's prayer grounded our conversation about the World Cup all month. We printed it out and we said it together nightly and talked about what it meant to glorify God through the exercise of our bodies, tying in Imago Dei, or that we need others to grow, tying in the need for relationships. By engaging with the church's wisdoms on sports, something they are incredibly passionate about, my children developed a greater appreciation for their bodies and how even in athletics, they can offer up a prayer with their whole self. God gives us every talent, whether it's creative arts or scientific discovery. One of the most comforting realizations I've had so far about the future of technology is that the church has weathered the storm of many innovations. At the Builders AI Forum in Rome last year, one of the speakers gave a 5-minute description of how the European world reacted to the printing press. It was many of the same concerns that people present today, including that students would never learn. Except in this case, it was because they didn't have to spend their first year at university hand copying the foundational texts. Today's questions and concerns are for a different technology, but they are formed from the same human instinct and fears. We can look at the history of the church's response, though, and draw great comfort from the examples of the saintly scientists and creators. A life fixed on the foundation of Christ, a house built on a rock, will provide the necessary grace to handle any crisis that technology brings. Forming our kids in their faith life is not ignoring the technology questions that are coming. It's making sure they have that sure foundation that allows them to meet the challenges with clarity and confidence. The church is more trustworthy than any media mindfulness plan or technology monitoring app. Imago Dei and prayer and discernment are where we start, but they can't be where that conversation ends. The rest of this talk is about my third pillar, tech formation. Our kids do encounter questions about technology and artificial intelligence, like, why is AI bad? And so we must build a family environment that allows them to engage those questions, bringing them to us and focusing on tech formation as a skill. There are two seemingly contradictory parts of Magnifica Humanitas when it comes to tech formation. In paragraph 110, Pope Leo points out that we can't avoid technological advancements. He writes about AI in particular, that it is, quote, already an environment in which we are immersed, as well as a force with which we must engage. Later on, in paragraph 141, he discusses a deep concern of technology use in youth, both digital devices and social media. He says, quote, having a personal mobile device at too early an age and using it without adult supervision can exacerbate young people's vulnerabilities, foster addiction, and expose them to isolation, bullying, and cyberbullying, as well as to pressures to share intimate images or sensitive information, end quote. So where does that leave families navigating tech formation? Pope Leo presents an air of inevitability about the realities of working with AI, but also strongly cautions families against early smartphone use. The starting point, I argue, is analog skills, not immediate tech integration. Through developing thoughtful engagement with the real world, we're teaching our kids how to ask questions with confidence and creating that family culture of curiosity. A family where they can easily come to you and ask those challenging questions or bring up uncomfortable conversations about their technology use. One easy way to do that is to start being honest about not knowing something and modeling how to find the answer. Sometimes it might be to Google it with your smartphone, but sometimes that topic is too big and the question is too complicated, and a book to read together or to look through is more appropriate. The library is a wonderful place to cultivate this sense of wonder and learning, surrounded by literally thousands of things that we don't know yet. One example of this choice in action came just last night. Wimbledon was on the TV at a restaurant, and my kids had 1,000 questions. We could have easily spent the entire evening on our phones answering them, because while my husband and I love sports, we know next to nothing about tennis. So instead, I offered to find them a book at the library so we could start to learn the rules together and answer all of their questions. And the conversation moved on from there. Without spending the entire meal on our phones, we were able to continue to converse together. Another example of curiosity-driven screen time is how we actually currently integrate screens into our family life right now. My kids are fairly young, 7 and under, so no one has their own screens yet. We're constantly discussing and questioning the content together in community. They do play video games. They play Mario together, taking turns and talking about the problem solving on the screen. We, unsurprisingly, watch a lot of sports. And in the process, we talk about new states. We learn the rules of the game. We practice math skills. Our kids know because of these experiences that the screen should bring us together and not further apart. All of these technology formation skills are done without smartphones. You don't have to give your kid a smartphone in order to start building these skills. Pope Leo also recognizes the importance of these real-life experiences, not just digital engagement, as part of the big picture of tech formation. Tucked away in the middle of Magnifica Humanitas is a paragraph that encompasses this off-screen priority. Pope Leo says, quote, the ability to care for one another is a fundamental dimension of our humanity, one that is learned and mastered through lived experiences. Reading stories to a child, offering company to an elderly person, and arranging a home so that it is welcoming are simple gestures often rooted in family life. They teach us to value care at a societal level and train us to recognize others as persons worthy of attention. In this, Pope Leo is highlighting that the embodied experience of human relationships is critical for our families, that our technology formation does not need to rely on strictly digital formation. Another way my family stays grounded in our technical work is finding real ways to use our hands. Most weekends, you'll find us in the kitchen working together to make something delicious. One of our favorite menu items is smoked brisket, and it's an all-day affair, but it's always worth it and reminds us that our hands are made to create. Another way that I like to cultivate curiosity is pointing out when a computer system is just flat out wrong. These conversations can flow naturally from the interaction with the technology that's already present in your life. It doesn't have to be a soapbox lecture or a lengthy discourse, just a, hey, did you notice this? Here are just a few examples from how that works in our own life. Probably this one you'll be able to implement yourself. It's long-term weather forecasting. My kids are so well attuned to the dangers of trusting weather forecasting, not because the meteorologists are bad at their job, but because we can't always 100% predict how the world is going to work. I also tend to point out when a computer suggests we do something ridiculous. Like the other day, my car suggested I could drive 70 miles an hour in our neighborhood and kept at that recommendation even when I was sitting parked in my driveway. Engaging in these conversations helps direct kids past curiosity towards healthy skepticism. They need to learn how to critically think through that misrepresented information. And good tech formation relies heavily on asking questions and being curious. The funniest opportunity for this in our house came recently when someone excitedly sent me a screenshot of Google AI summaries with created not coded, detailing the book's content and coming soon. She didn't notice, however, it hallucinated the name of the author. So instead of saying it was written by Stephanie Quesnelle, it combined my sister's first name, Amanda, with my last name, Amanda Quesnelle. I was able to bring this to my kids and say, like, hey, what do you think? The computer made up a whole person who wrote this book that you watched me work on for the last 6 months. You can also do these kinds of live demonstrations with your kids. Different chatbots have different limitations. They're changing rapidly, so my recommendations won't always be reflective when you watch this, but with a little pre-research, you can probably find a current persistent error. As of writing and recording this talk, Gemini doesn't always respond that Pope Leo is the current pope. So recently it was asked the age of the 4 most recent popes when elected. And it just spit out the ages, starting with Pope Francis. The output is totally believable with no hint that it is wrong. So highlighting this for kids in real time as they interact with the tool is a real concrete experience, and it shows them the need to know and learn independently from computers and also critically think and fact check the information that they receive from chatbots. Every family's experience with AI is going to be unique to their relationship with technology. So there's not a single right conversation to be had, but I encourage you to start those conversations. And you don't have to go it alone. In Created Not Coded, I walk families through applying 3 questions to help them discern tool use, flowing from those ideas of telos and imago Dei. 1, how can this tool be used according to its purpose? 2, can this tool magnify the gifts God gave me? 3, does using this tool make sense at this time? These questions are starting points for continuous questioning and curiosity, pushing each other towards a fuller understanding of a tool's telos and how it can help us glorify God. You can also download the conversation starters and dive into questions today. We are all called to build a family ethos where technology isn't inherently bad. Computers can help us do hard things, but first, our kids need to learn how to do hard things themselves. And doing hard things is a builder mentality. And this ties directly back to what Pope Leo talks about throughout Magnifica Humanitas. What are we building? When my husband was a kid, someone gave him an old broken computer and said if he could make it work, it was his. So he disassembled it and struggled through building his own computer. He was successful, and by his first communion, he had an operable computer that he was able to use his first communion money to buy a CD-ROM to add to. That early formative experience piqued his curiosity and gave him the wherewithal and the fortitude to continue to figure out programming, resulting in his current role at the forefront of artificial intelligence research. While my kids aren't yet programming computers, we are cultivating that builder mindset in age appropriate ways. We want our children to know building is important and to pursue those opportunities to create. It reminds me of the pride my 2-year-old can have building a tower of Legos. It tall, she always yells. And those Lego skills that she's building lead to my 7-year-old being able to build a tower as tall as herself. And all these skills, despite not being digital, are crafting brains that will be able to build with whatever technology is presented to them in the future. While the foundation can be laid without ever discussing artificial intelligence explicitly, my daughter's experience with her classmate shows that we do need to have those specific conversations. The opposite of consumption isn't abstinence, it's creation. While analog skills translate to the digital world, developing those digital skills on their own is important too. As our kids grow and we're confident in their foundations of prayer and discernment, the question should move towards how are they using technology? Pope Leo reminds us that technological innovation can represent, quote, human participation in the act of divine creation. Oriented correctly and with the right direction, our kids too can become builders of things that promote the common good and lead people to Christ. And that's where those curiosity questions come in, showing them how the tools can be wrong and showing them how to critically think through the steps to prove what the information they've been given is. Pope Leo also introduces the concept of digital sobriety in the encyclical. Sobriety here isn't complete abstinence either. It means moderation, not giving up technology entirely, but using it intentionally. So adults modeling what Pope Leo calls digital sobriety is a key. It means giving small changes and small examples. For example, I am a prolific reader. I can read 100 books in an entire year. And I used to read almost exclusively on my Kindle app on my phone. And recently I started reading real books instead of using that app. I'm still doing the same thing, reading a good book, but my kids see me holding a concrete physical book instead of a screen. It changed the dynamic in my house within a month. My kids started more regularly reaching for books themselves too. So I want to challenge you to think about one intentional action you can make to model digital sobriety to those around you this month. There are many resources for families on this type of tech formation, the slow introduction of technology with appropriate guardrails in conversations. I just finished reading 5 Habits of the Tech Ready Family by Chris McKenna. McKenna runs the program Protect Young Eyes and has been a longtime advocate of delayed smartphone use. He does a fantastic job laying out foundational practices for families as they allow tech into their homes. This intentional integration is way more effective to preparing our kids for a future surrounded by computers. Magnifica Humanitas is clear. Technology is unavoidable, but discernment of its use is the key. If our kids don't know how technology is built, if we don't know how technology is built, then we can never help them properly discern its use. One beautiful example of building technology for good is St. Carlo. St. Carlo Acutis consumed media in the forms of shows and video games. He dressed up like Spider-Man for Halloween one year, and he loved to watch Pokemon. However, he also learned to build, and it's what he built that put him on the path to sainthood. St. Carlo learned to code and used that knowledge to build a website cataloging Eucharistic miracles around the world. You can still visit that website today. This project required screen time. He was participating in that technological innovation that Pope Leo pointed out represents a participation in divine acts of creation. When we frame building as one aspect of our creative power from God, it can help us connect with our creations, that our creations are are part of our shared responsibility in the stewardship of the earth. And St. Carlo Acutis isn't our only example. In researching for Created Not Coded, I found so many amazing Catholic scientists who focused their talents towards building. Sister Mary Kenneth Keller, a nun, was the first woman to earn a PhD in computer science. One of my favorite stories, however, was Father Buenaventura Suarez, a Jesuit in South America, who built telescopes with materials he found locally. Before state-of-the-art European telescopes were imported, he was able to find unique things in space by using rocks from a river. Catholics have always been builders. It all calls to mind the parable of the talents in the Gospel of Matthew. As we give opportunities for building, we help our families cultivate their gifts. Focused on sharing what they have with the world, they will bear fruit. As parents, caregivers, and Catholics, we're building family cultures so that kids can go out and help build the world with God at its center. By focusing on those three pillars, Imago Dei, prayer and discernment, and tech formation, we can readily answer Pope Leo's questions. What are we building with confidence? Families that are ready. If you want to keep exploring these three pillars with your family, please grab the free conversation guide at Created Not Coded and follow along as we get closer to publishing. This is the vision Pope Leo is calling all Catholics to pursue. He's confident we can achieve it too. He writes, in this way, the Church will be able to bear credible witness to society that seeking the common good together with shared responsibility and fraternity is not a utopia, but a real possibility. And as for my daughter's question about AI being bad, we're still talking about it. That's kind of the point.